And we are live. This is DJ Mega Game 17, and I am doing a video response of sorts to Jameshanyson. And the topic for today is: did the ending of Bleach ruin the series? Now, alright, so my thoughts on that. As far as the actual question itself, no, I don't think it ruined the ending of Bleach. No, actually, that's not right. I mean, did the ending of Bleach did the ending ruin the series? Is what I meant to say. Well, that's what I was gonna say. No, but honestly, it kind of well, not yes and no, sort of to a degree. I should say. I would say it hurts it, but I don't think it completely destroys it. Of course, that depends on how bad the ending is. Granted, the ending of Bleach was pretty bad, but I don't think it completely destroyed it. What did ruin the series, however, is the stuff that came before the actual ending. All right, so we all know that the ending was rushed. The last six chapters and all that jazz. So this, of course, led to a very anticlimactic, final battle and the defeat of Juabach. The whole dance is mocking it, and it being kind of poorly done, even though it was sort of set up two chapters in advance before the last six chapters, but even then it was still like a rush mess. And then the last two chapters were pretty just horrendous, especially chapter 685, at least in my opinion anyway. But I don't think the ending itself ruined the series. It just hurt it, and it did leave a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. Because now, when a lot of people think of Bleach, they will be thinking of the ending and how bad it was. However, as far as the series being ruined, that most likely that did happen. However, the actual ending and also just as well as the last six chapters of the series wasn't the full contributors to the problem. They contributed to it, but they weren't the full problem. You see, Bleach as a whole has been honestly going in a downward spiral for some time. I actually left a comment on this video about that. I'm not sure if you saw it yet, but yeah, the series has been going downhill for some time now. First, I would say it's been going downhill since the Mundo invasion and the Aranka saga, because that's where a lot of the bad writing in Bleach started happening. Like that's when like plot points and stuff started coming up and not being addressed or just being dropped altogether. Like the whole Orihime destroying the Hogyoku subplot, which at this point become like my go-to this I guess thing to bring up whenever I discuss problems like that. Plus, there's just other issues. But I guess we should talk about the final arc. Was the final arc as a whole good? Well, in my opinion, no, it was not. It did have a good start, and the best part of the final arc was the first invasion, but it's like after that it started falling apart, especially from chapter 547 onwards. But the point I feel where the arc really started just to collapse on itself was when the captains got their stolen Bankais back. Because from that point forward, it's like the whole flow and the pacing of the arc is just messy. Like just the pacing just comes to a screeching halt. There isn't much plot progression afterwards. The battles, for the most part, progressively get worse, with the exception of a few, such as Renji versus Massey Masculine, Colmore versus Bamiella, their final battle, and Ichibe versus Juha, and Mayuri versus Giselle and her zombie army. Those were pretty much the best fights in that whole situation. Oh, and two of the elite fights, those being Mayuri versus Pernita and Kisuke's group versus Askin. And even then, really just Kisuke versus Askin because the stuff before that was kind of meh. But then you have all the other nonsense. Like I said, most of the fights were not very good outside the ones that I mentioned. A lot of them had very anticlimactic endings. Several, quite a few of the stories were just unnecessarily overpowered, hacked, and in the worst case scenarios, broken, like Drew Bach. Who to this day I'm still wondering who in the world would give somebody the power of what Kubo gave Juha. Which is another thing I want to address with this video because one thing I've been seeing, this has been bothering me a lot, which I guess could warrant its own separate video, but I might as well address it here. And that's the whole, everybody just kind of blaming Shonen Jump for Bleach, Bleach's ending. Not to say that Shonen Jump doesn't deserve the blame, or at least some of it, but that's just it though. I think it only deserves some of it, not all of it. People seem to be blaming all of it on Shonen Jump and none of it on Kubo, despite the fact that he has been a contributor to Bleach's fall. See, well, here's the thing people need to understand. The reason why Bleach was canceled in the first place, or why it had a rush ending, was because it wasn't doing well in terms of sales and popularity. Well, yes, it was still in the top 30, and it didn't even, I think, make it into like the top 20 with this last volume. The year before that, which was 2015, it wasn't even in the top. Yeah, it wasn't in the top 20. It was top 25, I think. So yeah, it was in the top 30. Now this may not seem like a big deal, but when you consider the fact that Bleach was legitimately one of the big three in terms of actual sales, that is a big deal. Well, in terms of both sales and popularity. But since the full rebirth, Bleach fell out of the top three and eventually fell out of the top 10, and even eventually again in 2015 fell out of the top 20. When you consider where Bleach was, that's a big fall. And the other thing too is I heard like in popularity polls and stuff, Bleach just wasn't doing well, which I think is the other reason why they decided just to axe it because it was just like, well, it's not pulling up the popularity and the sales that we want, so we're just gonna get rid of it. Well, I do think they should have allowed for him to end the story properly, or at least give him a chance to end it properly. Because in my personal opinion, the series should have ended like I would say 2020 at the earliest, since Kubo did say he wanted the series to go on for like 10 more years after the Araka saga ended, which was back in 2010, which would mean 2020 would be like the end point, more or less. So even if you wanted to say the series got cut 4 years short, you know, 15 years or whatever, that's still a decent amount of time for Kubo to wrap stuff up. And the other problem a lot of people have with the ending, aside from the anticlimactic final battle and how everything was just kind of, well, obviously the rush issue, and how everything was just kind of swept under the rug, and the pairings. It's also the fact that the series has so many unanswered questions. But I feel like there's more than just that. When you really think about it, the story of Bleach by the time it ended was kind of incomplete. Like, like when you really think about it, there wasn't any real resolution to anything that happened. And I say this because even Juha Bach wasn't even properly resolved. He didn't even get truly defeated. Because in the very next chapter, after he's defeated, 10 years later, he comes back somehow, and it's just like, well, that crap was for naught. And then he just kind of disappears. Unless Ichigo's son put his finger in his shadow or whatever. It's very inconclusive. Like, that's not how you end your story. And on top of that, you didn't even end like I was saying, he didn't end the conflict properly. So the other problem that arises is, of course, the unanswered questions. Here's the problem: most of these unanswered questions is stuff that should have been answered years ago, and this is why I have the problem with the whole Shonen Joe blaming everything solely on Shonen Joe problem, because it's just like, well, you can't blame stuff like that on them, because this is stuff Kubo, like, at least when it comes to those unanswered questions, because that's the stuff Kubo should have addressed years ago. Like, for example, the Soul King, the noble families, the unshown Bankais and Shikais, or just the Zanbakutos in general, and maybe other various transformations and abilities and move sets and what other stuff. Just a bunch of other stuff that hasn't been addressed. Like, we have several backstories. Like, a lot of that stuff could have been addressed earlier on. I've said this about the Bankais. Like, a lot of the Bankais could have been and should have been shown during the Aranka saga, particularly during the Battle of the Fake Car Town. Like, there was no excuses for why why half the people who had a Bankai during that point in time didn't use it, well, didn't use it. And I know there's this excuse, like, with certain characters, like, oh, we can't use Bankai because, oh, it's too dangerous. I call bullcrap on that, because it's, in the final arc, they seem to not be hesitant in using it at all at that point. And you can argue that the steroids were more powerful than, the Arakars. Some of them were, not all of them, but still, it was a threat that was to level the Soul Society, that was threatening them, and basically the existence of the Bleachverse itself. Yet they were too hesitant in using their full power. I really do believe the reason why Kubo didn't show those Bankais during that point in time is the fact that he himself did not know what the Bankais were, and the fact that there's still Bankais that we haven't seen yet. I think just kind of drives that point home. Like, for example, why did Ukitake ever go Bankai? He was never given an excuse as to why he didn't go Bankai. He just didn't. Same case with Love, Shinji. Okay, Ishin's, he kind of got an excuse later on, but still. I'm just saying, some of these characters, they had like no excuses as to why they didn't have a Bankai. I guess the point I'm trying to make is that one of the reasons why I do blame some of this on Kubo is the fact that, probably unlike most Bleach fans, I don't think he's that good of a writer. In fact, I don't really think he's a good writer at all. I'd say he's like maybe subpar at best, and even then, that's being generous. And I already brought up some issues there. I mean, I already made it like a 2.5 hour video talking about all my issues with the final arc and just some of the bad writing I was in that. So what I'm saying is that I do think some of it should be blamed on Kubo as far as the way the series went, because Bleach is not a perfect series. In fact, it's a very problematic series from a writing standpoint. It has a lot of issues. And going back to the whole rush ending thing, well, Kubo wasn't wasting so much time on stuff that didn't matter. It wasn't taking a sweet time to get to the points that actually mattered. Then maybe the series wouldn't have had such a rush ending. It would have had a proper. It would have had things to be a little more proper. For example, Ichigo versus Juha. Not the final battle, the battle before the final battle. That battle was a mess. What I did find, and still do find, the Juha trolling Ichigo thing hilarious. It shouldn't have happened. Like, again, this is what I'm talking about. Kubo wasting time. Instead of having Juha just troll Ichigo for almost 10 chapters, why not have them have a legitimate fight with each other? Again, why not show his Bankai? Again, going back to the Bankai thing. But this one is the most ludicrous of them all. Like, how do you not show the main character's real Bankai? That doesn't make any sense. Unless Kubo didn't know what he wanted his Bankai to be. I don't want to get too much into that one, but like, come on, what was that? And and again, the whole Almighty thing. Like, who gives any character that type of ability, like, where they can not only see the future and every possible future, but they can manipulate the futures, even the one in which they died. Do you know how unbelievably broken that is? Not only that, but this power, because of that power, it somehow allows him to negate other people's abilities. That's beyond broken. Like, how do you beat someone like that? And that's only talking about the Almighty. That's not even going into all the other powers that he supposedly had. That's just beyond broken. Like, how do you stop a character like that? Which is one of the reasons why I don't think this is one of the reasons why I don't think if Kubo had more time that Juha's box Juha box defeat would have been any better, because there was honestly no way for Juha Bach to be defeated legitimately without some type of Darius as Machina, because all the characters that could defeat him was, well, they already got defeated by him. So, basically all those doors that could have led to a decent turnout with his defeat was closed. So basically by that point, the best way Kubo could have ended that whole thing, even with the whole rush situation, would have been just to let Juha Bach win. And I know, and I know, you're gonna say, well, it's not a good thing to have the bad guy win, but in that point, I think it would have been. And also, would Drew Harbaugh winning really would have been that bad of a thing? Because what his apparent true goal was, what didn't even sound that bad. If anything, that just sounded pretty decent, or at least something to consider. Which is another thing too. Is like when Drew Harbaugh finally gets defeated, we start to find out his real motives and what he really wanted to do, and it just brings up more questions and answers. Yet leaving another on, I guess, I don't even know where to go. I don't even know where I'm going with this. So basically, Drew Harbaugh is just like another Isaac in the sense that he's the incomplete character. And I should also tackle another point that James Sanson and, what was it, Monka Girl, whatever her name is, something they were talking about in the video about where the series should have ended, or at least discussing that whole topic, because that's a big thing in the Bleach fandom too. Of course, Bleach ending after the Iranka saga. I think Bleach could have ended there, personally. While there were some things that were left unanswered, we still have a bunch of unanswered questions, even more so than we did back then. So I feel like at least ending it there would, while the ending still wouldn't have been good, it would have been at least decent and passable. Because at least then the big bad is defeated, or his army is defeated, and each girl has lost his powers, so they can just, so everything can kind of just, I guess you could say, go back to normal, maybe. Because now I think about it, the only thing that we truly ever got an answer to, as far as like after that arc, was Ichigo's parents, basically the origins of Ichigo and how he came to be. And as far as the full arc being a good arc, it's not. I personally like the full arc per se, although that's more so because of the anime, not because of the manga. The manga version of that arc is not good, but then again, that's the anime, because for some reason the anime does a better job fleshing out, I guess, Kubo's ideas and stuff. Plus, the pacing in general is just better in the anime. So all those times where it just felt like it was just kind of wandering aimlessly, or it's just taking too long to get to the point, the anime kind of speeds that up. But yeah, there's just a lot of issues there. So what I'm trying to say is that the ending of Bleach doesn't necessarily ruin the series, but it does hurt it. What ruined the series, however, is all the other problems that existed before the ending even happened. And yes, the series did have problems, serious issues, serious issues that for years have been piling up on top of each other until it eventually just collapsed into itself. So when people, I guess, speak negatively about Bleach these days, it's not just the ending people are talking about. Honestly, they kind of talk about Bleach as a whole. Not to say Bleach as an entire series is a bad series, but it's not a good series either. Like, how would I rate Bleach on a scale of 1 to 10? I'd probably give like a 4. Like, Bleach is like a subpar at best series, I would say. Because Bleach has 5 arcs, well, 5 main story arcs, and only 2 of them were actually, I would say, was actually good from beginning to end, while the others had this whole where they start out good and then they kind of, and then they start to waver in the middle and then just completely fall apart in the last section of it. And each of these arcs kind of have this problem. Although I guess you could say with the exception of Full Arc, because some people argue that that arc was just bad from beginning to end. I would debate that kind of, because I personally think the last arc is worse than the Full arc, and I think the middle section is pretty poor as well. But anyway, I think I'm rambling at this point. You basically get what I'm trying to say here. So how long has this crap been going on? Let's see. I know. I just checked the stream. Oh crap! It's almost 30 minutes. Yeah, so I guess I'll just try to end it here. So just to reiterate, the ending didn't kill the series. It damaged it for sure. It left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths and a bad reputation for the series as well as Kubo. But the other existing issues with the series overall is what killed it. Now, whether or not it can redeem itself is up for debate. I guess at this point, it really depends on how the novels go and the live action Bleach movie. If those things don't redeem it, then that's pretty much the end of the series. So anyway, rate, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys later.